Oh crap, I think we're live. Holy shit, Randy.
Kind of looks like it.
It's on. Anyway, hey guys, it's another Wednesday night here at the house of Donny Cho. And tonight I have my special guest with me, Randy, the Savage, Gilbert. Anyway, Randy, how are you doing tonight?
I'm alive and I'm kicking. As you can see, my buddy Bruiser's here with me. That side, sorry. There you go.
Rest in peace.
Yep.
Yeah. So, I guess you guys may have figured out the theme of tonight's show based off the title and the thumbnail and the Browns. Tonight, we are going to talk about wrestling. And if you're one of those people who doesn't like wrestling or who thinks it's stupid and who thinks it's a bunch of fake crap, then my only message for you is to kiss my yellow ass. And for the remaining, I mean, you can still stay and watch, please. By all means, you're still invited. But yeah, tonight we're going to talk about wrestling. The man that I've wanted to talk about wrestling for the longest time with, that I've always wanted to have on my show. It's finally here, folks. Randy finally made it, and tonight we are going to talk about some goddamn wrestling.
Hell yeah.
Fuck Bigfoot,
It's not
man.
wrestling,
I'm tired
it's
of talking about Bigfoot. Wrestling.
Rasslin. Got it.
Yeah. Anyway, for the people at home, Randy, who might think that wrestling is a bunch of dumb fake shit, I want you to give your personal rebuttal and an explanation of why wrestling is the bomb.
Okay, so the bomb, I don't know so much about that, but is it
Well,
fun
why
to watch?
you love wrestling?
It's
Why you
because
love
it's so
wrestling?
much fun to watch. I used to equate it to a soap opera for men, is what it about amounted to. Back in the old days when guys used to watch roller derby, you watch the roller derby queens get out there and get after it. Same basic concept. You have the storyline, you've got phenomenal athletes, and they could say, oh, well, it might be fake, it might be predetermined, but I don't know if I'd want to get hit by some of those things.
No.
So,
So usually my response, when people say, "Hey, isn't it? Hey, wrestling's fake. Why do you watch it?" You know what? You know what I always say.
mhm,
You know what else is fucking fake? Cyborgs from the future. But you've all
yeah,
seen Terminator.
exactly. You
You
still
know
like it, don't you?
yeah. You know what else is fake? Galaxy far, far away with TIE fighters and Star Destroyers. That shit's fake, but we all watch it,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Yeah.
sure do.
That shit's all fake.
Every chance I get.
Yeah. You know what else is fake? The Mona Lisa. You know that's not an actual woman you're looking at. You know that's paint on canvas.
Yeah, it's a self
That's
portrait.
not a real woman. That shit's fake.
It's a
It's all
self portrait.
fake.
It's
Yeah.
Rembrandt's self portrait.
It's not a real person,
Nope.
people. It's a piece of canvas in a frame with paint that's made to look like a woman. You know that's not a real woman. It's fake. You know
Oh man,
what else
Jason's
is
already
fucking
chiming in.
fake? You know what else is fucking fake? Every goddamn play Shakespeare wrote was fake. You know that's not really Juliet stabbing herself at the end of that play, right? You know that's just an actress portraying Juliet
Juliet.
pretending to
Yeah,
stab herself. You know
exactly.
that shit's fake, right? It's all fake.
Now, do I have
So
to go
let me
back to that
tell
one
you,
guy? It's still real to me.
you know how sometimes people bring up like if you had a time machine, what you would do? You know
Yeah.
what I would do, honestly, Randy, if I had a time
What's that?
machine? This is what I would do. I would go back to the day of Shakespeare and I would walk up to William Shakespeare and I'd be like, "Hi, my name is Donnie and I'm from the future." And then I would explain to him the time machine and I would bring him back to pro wrestling when it was in his prime.
Yeah.
And I would take Shakespeare to watch wrestling. And you know what Shakespeare would do? He would snap his pen in half. And he's like, "Oh, all my shit sucks." And you know what I would
Yeah.
say to Mr. Shakespeare? And I would be like, "You're right, sir. Your shit does suck.
It sucks. You need to pay
It sucks
attention
and it's
better.
boring."
Yeah. Yeah. You're right about that. I mean, what three-quarter what makes wrestling and people like wrestling is the writing,
Yeah.
honestly.
So yeah, that's just ridiculous. Just saying like, oh, it's fake. I don't like it. Okay, you watch like Van Damme movies. You watch Jackie Chan movies, right? That's a
Oh
choreographed
yeah,
fight, but people watch that stuff. But
oh yeah,
imagine doing that live in front of an audience, like
hmm
Broadway style. That would be even more impressive because it's live,
yeah.
wouldn't it?
And you got to you can't. You hear people talk about botches all the time, but they're going to happen. But to do the level those guys do without serious injury and keeping the
Yeah,
audience still invested in the actual match, it says something about all of them. It really does.
yeah. And Blue Crossroads asked, so Donnie, you're saying that what you're saying is that wrestling is an art form. Actually, my main point was that Shakespeare's works were a bunch of overrated garbage, and they're boring and they're shit. But also, wrestling's awesome.
Yeah, wrestling's awesome. That's the main point. Take it off.
Yeah, that's the main point. Dude, Hamlet barely had any fight scenes. There was a lot of like talking, and then there's one word fight at the end. I'm like, fuck this fucking stupid ass play. People give it all this respect. Like, oh, this is the best shit ever. Really? How come no one's body slamming each other? They're just talking and shit. It's fucking dumb, is
Kind of
what
like
I
a
say.
Magneticus's thing there. Oh, Randy Savage, where art around there without.
Where art thou, Randy Savage? He is watching over us tonight, folks. He's
Yeah.
with us. Okay. So anyway, Randy, why don't you walk us through your earliest, I don't know, give us a journey of your fandom.
Oh man, let's see. Well, of course, being in Texas,
Mm-hmm.
1975 or so, I am just really starting to get into it, and that's the heyday of the Von Erichs. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
Fritz mainly at that point, and just the boys were just starting to really get into it.
Yeah.
So I was a big fan. Obviously, being here, this is all I saw on TV. I didn't see
And the Von
Georgia
Erichs were
Championship.
like gods in
Yeah,
Texas. Yep.
oh yeah, by a long, especially North Texas. Now you had the Funks up in Amarillo. You had different areas in Texas, but as far as right here, yes, it was the Von Erichs. So I grew up literally that Mark kid, sitting there. Oh my God, everything they do is awesome, and everybody else is bad. So
Yeah.
but at that time, it wasn't writing; it was just the show. It was the wrestling show. Every once in a while, you get the good interview where somebody really tears it up,
Mm-hmm.
But it was the show, and everybody had these larger than life characters in that ring, and that's what it was. It really was
Hmm.
just that, larger than life characters in that ring. And as they went along, obviously I followed them along their careers, some shorter than others, obviously, and some got to stick around a little bit longer. And as it went along, the 80s happened, and here comes Vince and starts up the WWF stuff. Oh, all of a sudden I got something different I can watch because now cable comes into being, and I've got, you know, at that time NWA, Georgia Championship Wrestling, on TBS from the Omni in Atlanta. So
Mm-hmm.
hey, I'm being exposed now to the Dusty Rhodeses, the Ric Flairs, which Ric Flair I got to see a little bit along with Harley Race, obviously when the world champ would come to town.
What
And
was
I
the
was
promotion
immediate.
that the Von Erichs? Oh, I'm sorry. I
No,
just had to ask. So when you were into the Von Erichs, right,
yeah,
in those sportatorium days,
yep, yep.
what was that promotion? Which promotion was it?
That was World Class Championship Wrestling. At first, it was known as Big Time Wrestling, and then Fritz Von Erich, who owned the territory, he
Mm-hmm.
rebranded it as World Class Championship Wrestling, and that's what it became for this area.
Mm. So that was
So
the Texas. That was the Texas
that was the North
promotion,
Texas, yeah,
essentially.
North Texas. Yep.
Oh,
So,
what did the South Texas have its own promotion?
oh yeah, you had Paul Bosch had his stuff in the Houston, San Antonio area. You
Mm-hmm.
had the Funks up in Amarillo area, in Panhandle and stuff. But they were
Hmm.
all part of the NWA at that time. So the NWA,
Which means,
National Wrestling Alliance. They were a group of the promoters that would get together and they would determine, obviously who's going to do what and how they're going to do it. But each territory had its own little booker and its own little thing. So we didn't see a lot of the other stuff. We didn't see stuff from Amarillo. We didn't see stuff from San Antonio and stuff here. We saw
hmm.
the Von Erichs. We saw them when they were here, Bruiser Brody when he was here, the Freebirds, but it was all this North Central Texas area. And after that,
So it would just be wrestlers going back and forth.
Yeah, and they would jump to other promotions like I'll never forget one of the biggest things that got me in 1981. I think it was 81. David Von Erich left for a little bit from here, and that's when he met up with the Freebirds in Georgia. I think they were actually in
Mm,
Florida, actually, but they were at Florida Championship Wrestling, and he was a bad guy there. He was a heel, which a
okay.
lot of people don't realize. David did do a heel stick every so often. So he got in good with the Freebirds, and he brought the Freebirds, helped bring the Freebirds into Texas. Then, of course, all
So
the fallouts happened, and all that crap. But David was down there, and that's where he started getting noticed by all the other promoters as having the quote unquote it factor. I don't want to go too deep into it, but
yeah.
it was one of those things that David had the charisma, and he's what drew me in originally.
Mhm.
He was my first bigger than life guy that I would do anything to go watch and see because he was
Hmm.
that freaking awesome.
So I got into wrestling as a kid, as a child of the '80s, through the WWE, which was
Hmm.
WWF back then.
Yep.
So I was only like I did watch a little bit of NWA, but I don't know much about. And I've watched clips of matches and promos later
Yeah.
on, right? But I wasn't
Yeah.
there for those territories when it was happening,
Yeah.
as it was happening, like you were, right?
Yeah.
But the more I understand, I mean, I know of the territory days, I know stories of
Yeah.
it, especially when they talk about them a lot in the shoot interviews.
Yeah. Yep.
So, but the way I'm beginning to understand it, so NWA was basically you had these different territories for different states,
Hmm.
and primarily in the
Yeah.
South, and
South
the
and
NWA
Southwest.
was just kind of like this, I guess, an alliance of promoters,
Yeah. That's exactly what it is.
and they would have like special crossover events,
Every so
right?
often, yeah, they sure would. They would.
Or you would have a wrestler from one territory go to another territory for like an angle.
Yeah. Or they would go in for
See,
3 or 4 shows, make a payday, and then go back home.
See, that sounds like a lot of fun though, because you're like, "Oh shit, I didn't know that guy was gonna show up here tonight, and he's taking on
Yep.
my hometown guy?"
Yeah.
Like,
That's
people
exactly
always
it.
complain about like WWE and New Japan and AEW and like, why do all these promotions gotta be separate, man? Why can't they just go back and forth?
Yeah. And it's all about money now. It's all about money now.
Yeah,
That's why. I
yeah.
mean, because look at the WWE now. 3/4 of the people that they have, they own the name and likeness to. They own that. They've copyrighted or trademarked that name that they're using up there, so they can only use that name up there.
Talk about an evil corporation. They
Well, I
provide me
mean,
with so many great memories, but some of the shit that they've been pulling, man.
well, look at case in point for anybody that I know we got somebody maybe that doesn't watch it a whole lot, but what happened this last weekend? Edge leaves WWE
Mhm,
and now he's part of AEW, but they didn't
mhm.
own the copyrights or the trademark to the Metalingus uh, music that he
Yeah,
used. They
yeah,
didn't own the trademark to Rated R Superstar, but they did own the Edge
yeah.
name. So he's Adam Copeland now, but still has everything else intact.
Hmm,
He can use it however he wants to use it.
yeah.
Which,
It's kinda fucked
uh,
up that it has to be that way though,
yeah,
'cause
I mean,
that's
it's
like
same.
the opposite of what the territories were.
Yeah, that's exactly because everybody kept their name everywhere they went because they didn't think that they had to trademark a name. They really didn't think that way.
Yeah.
So,
So for
but
people,
anyway,
I guess for people listening at home who may not fully understand, imagine it like this, okay? Imagine if you were a lifelong comic book fan and you were into like the MCU, right? And you watch like Marvel movies and TV shows, but then all of a sudden for like one movie out of nowhere, fucking Batman shows up. And you're like, "Holy shit, Batman is here?" I mean, that's
yeah,
probably what it felt like when you were a
oh
kid
yeah,
in those territory days, right?
oh yeah. I mean, here, case in point. One year we were sitting here watching, and David Von Erich, Kerry Von Erich had just come in. He had just started out, and
Mhm.
out of the blue, they're having a match. Iceman King Parsons had come in and got started, and that's a name that a lot of people won't really recognize because he was just here. He never went anywhere else.
Mhm.
But right behind him, here comes a special. He brings in a special helper with one of his feuds, and here comes JYD. Junkyard Dog comes in here and wrestles him in the sportatorium.
Everyone, were
This
you there live for that?
No, no, no. I saw it on
Oh,
TV.
but you
It
saw
was
it on
taped
TV,
late,
but
but I saw it on
you were
TV.
like,
He came in
"What
and
the hell?"
he come from, I mean, because at that time he was wrestling Mid South, which was,
Mhm,
in the Alabama, Mississippi area,
mhm. I
and
remember him.
so and then that was before he went up to WWE and WWF at that time, obviously. But he shows up and he comes out to Bad Leroy Brown. I mean, nobody for the longest time, nobody ever came out to music. That was a Freebird thing. They started all that.
Hmm, really?
Yeah, Michael
Really?
Hayes was the one that started all that with Freebird when they were the first ones to come to the ring with actual music leading them in.
So, when you were okay, so then you were there when WWF first got big, like the first WrestleManias. So as a child of the territory days when WWF comes along, I'm gonna call it WWF. When WWF comes along, what was your first reaction to it?
I thought it was something new at that point. I didn't see it as the uh, powerhouse it was going to become. Obviously, I thought it was just
Mhm,
because at that time, anybody read the old PW, the Bill After magazines, if you want to call them that.
mhm,
See what Donnie Danny says there. Danny stating about Ric Flair. You're right. Ric Flair trademarked his name too, and it was the smartest thing he could have done.
yep,
Sting's the same way. Sting trademarked his name Sting, and he lets the Sting that's the music part of the police. He lets him
mhm,
use that because he tells him, "Hey, I'm not part of that part of the world, so you can have that part." But Sting is
that's
actually
cool.
trademarked to Steve Borden. So
Hmm,
anyway, as you were talking about, I didn't see it as the big thing. I thought it was as another territory because as the after magazines that I got at the time,
mhm.
Pro Wrestling Illustrated, wrestling, not the Wrestling Observer, but Pro Wrestling Illustrated.
I remember
There was
Pro Wrestling Illustrated.
and several different ones. They were all what we call after magazines because Bill After was the main head honcho on all of them.
Can I
But
tell you the first my oh, real quick aside, can I tell
yeah,
you, the story of the first time I ever laid my eyes on Pro Wrestling, Illustrated? It was I think it was Pro Wrestling Illustrated or one of those.
hmm that was one of
I
the big
was
ones. Yeah.
7 years old. I was 7 years old, and my parents
hmm
and I were driving from New Jersey to Pennsylvania into Poconos on our way to a church retreat, and we're in this bumblefuck ass town. We're the only
hmm
Asians there. My parents have to stop for gas. We go into, like, this bumblefuck ass store, and I look at the magazine rack, and there it
Yep.
is, a copy of Pro Wrestling Illustrated, and now as a
Yeah.
kid, at this point as a 7-year-old, all I know is WWF Superstars.
Yeah.
So
Exactly.
I opened it, I'm like, "I don't know any of these people,
Who are
but
these
I love
people? Yeah.
wrestling."
Yeah.
And the first thing I see when I open the magazine is a picture of Abdullah the Butcher, all covered in blood, and I'm like, "Oh my god, what is this? This is not the wrestling I know. I know the Junkyard. I know Hacksaw Jim Duggan.
Yeah. Yeah.
I I saw that picture of Abdullah the Butcher just I'm like, "How does he have so much blood on his face? It doesn't make sense."
Yeah.
My mind was
I
blown. My mind was
but
freaking blown. I asked my dad to buy it. He didn't know what it was, and I just stuck it in my backpack, and the whole time during the church retreat, I just kept staring at that picture, man.
yeah, of Abdullah.
That was
Yeah.
one of those pivotal moments where the creature that Donny Cho eventually became, that was one of
Yep.
those pivotal moments.
Oh yeah. I mean, and that was the only back then. That was the only way we got any of that kind of information from other territories was through those magazines.
Yeah,
That's how I learned about Georgia Championship Wrestling, Florida Championship Wrestling, the Mid Atlantic states. All that stuff that was going on with Jim Crockett Promotions at the time.
that's how you
All of
heard
that
of some of
stuff.
these wrestlers. And
Yeah.
remember they would always do, like, their top 100, and then they would have, like, Ultimate Warrior would be number 3, and then there would be this number 2 guy. I'm like, "God damn, who is that guy?
Yeah.
Ultimate
Exactly.
Warrior is only number 3?"
Oh, I need to get with Danny though. I see that comment he's got to work for Jim
What does he say?
Crockett Promotions from '79 to holy crap, dude! I want to just listen. I want him to just tell stories. That's all I want.
That's what I was telling you before we got on the
Yeah.
air. I was like, "Pay attention
Yep.
to Danny Staton, man. He
I
used to
am.
work for them."
I'm seeing his because I mean, there's been people that I've talked to. That, of course, they claim when they're talking to you online, "Oh, I did this and I did that." Well, one guy even told me, "Oh, I was Dusty Rhodes' son." Wait a second, what? No, he's got two sons. That's all that I know of. And you don't fit the description of either one of them. So, but anyway, that was a different story. Um, but like I said, those after magazines, that was every one of those magazines especially Pro Wrestling Illustrated, it had three top tens. You had the AWA, you had the NWA, and you had the WWF, which was WWWF before that. But you had those three, and it would tell you. I mean, because they would say stuff like, Jesse Ventura and Adrian Adonis were at max number 7 tag team in the AWA, but they go to WWE or WWF and they become tag team champions or some crap. They would cross reference all of them and stuff. And it's all kayfabe. Everything's kayfabe. We'll discuss that obviously here in a few minutes too. But the it was like, hey, well, who is that? Who is this guy? And I started looking. And then when one of those guys would show up in the territory you're used to watching, like here with the Von Erichs, you're like, when did they get this guy to come in? When did they get this guy? How did they get him?
It's
And
like
Andre,
Batman showing up in a Marvel movie.
Exactly, just like that. I mean, but you talk about, look at Andre. Andre went to all of them. He didn't care. He hit everybody until
look at what Danny said.
WWE locked him up. Yeah.
I drove Andre the Giant in Atlanta. I got thousands of wrestling photos to prove my shit. Yo, prove it, baby.
Dude, we want to see him too, because everybody likes
I want to
talking
see
about
him.
Andre now, and all the stories of Andre that are out there. It's just so amazing to listen to that dude. Just the stories of that guy was it's just amazing, because
you know who in my opinion are the top 4 most legendary people to have ever lived? Number 1 is Jesus, number 2 is Buddha, number 3 is Andre the Giant, and number 4 is Bruce Lee.
I can't argue with a lot of that, honestly. I really can't argue with a lot of that. I mean, because Andre, wrestling would not be where it is today if it hadn't been for Andre to start with, honestly. That's my personal opinion. Because him going to those territories in the 70s and early 80s helped put those guys over and bring money in to keep things going. So, and once again, we're getting off on another tangent, but he gave so much to the industry too,
Yeah. He said his mom was a photographer for Wrestling Illustrated and WWF magazine. I remember them old school WWF magazines.
Yep.
They were so glossy. Remember those?
Well, I never had the WWF one. Like I said, I was always on the Pro Wrestling Illustrated one. I was on the Aftermag. So
yeah.
But anyway,
what did you think? What did you think of all that Hulkamania shit when it was happening?
As a what was that 14, 15 at that time or whatever. I bought into a lot of it. I didn't,
you bought into it.
Prayers eat you down.
I mean, I was
that kind of crap. No, I didn't. But as far as the show that went along with it, oh yeah, I was all about it. I was like, I want to watch this crap and see what happens next. Because once again, I was a Ric Flair mark, so anything bad guys did, I kind of liked, unless it was just something really stupid. Because I enjoyed watching the Freebirds. I enjoyed watching what was it, the Midnight Express when they were here. The original
Blue Crossroads. I remember that story. I remember Blue Crossroads told me that story. Back in Memphis in the 80s, I picked up and transported Randy Savage. Blue Crossroads is a law enforcement officer.
Oh, cool.
And he picked up and he transported Randy Savage, Hulk Hogan, and Ricky Steamboat into police tactical Suburban from airport to hotel. They couldn't fit into taxi. I can imagine that too. Really? Actually, yeah. Hulk Hogan was he was a big boy.
Yeah, he's 6'9", some crap like that. I mean, at that time, let's think talk about how big those guys are. Do you remember? I don't know if you ever saw them, but they were called the Fantastics. They wrestled here in the North Texas area. Now in 86, 87, they were big around here. I mean, the girls, all of them, they were just hot. They looked tiny in the ring compared to other people. I mean, Bobby Fulton and Tommy Rogers. I'll never forget them as long as I live. But they were itty bitty compared to the guys in the ring. They look small compared to the Von Erichs. Well, I worked in a McDonald's in the 80s, in about 86, 87. And guess who decides they're going to come through our hometown here and get something at McDonald's? The Fantastics. Well, every little girl that worked on the dang front line was all fluttered. And, of course, I'm looking out there. What are they talking about? And I look up and see them. They wasn't no little guys.
Yeah. They stuck out.
They were pretty big boys. So I'm like, mental note, we don't want to piss anybody off, okay?
You speaking of which, that reminded me. You know what was very jarring for me was seeing who was it? Tommaso Ciampa and Randy
Yeah,
Orton together.
yeah.
Remember that one
How
Survivor Series where they had
how much
NXT versus
bigger that
yeah, you're like,
Orton was?
you don't see when you see Tommaso Ciampa, he doesn't seem small, but then you see Randy Orton next to him, who doesn't seem that particularly big compared
Well,
to everyone else in WWE. But you're like,
less
whoa, that's a size difference.
Magneticus, that would be Brutus the Barber Beefcake that you're talking about there. Ed Leslie.
Yeah. So you were
Um,
primarily a Ric Flair mark.
oh yeah, I was a big Four Horsemen
Really?
guy. I mean,
Oh.
I was stationed at Fort Campbell when Starrcade happened in Nashville. I believe it was 1995 was that one. I went and saw what we
Hmm.
called Ric Flair getting his Dirty Dozen, his 12th world title.
Hmm.
You know, and it was I might have been in the nosebleed seats, but boy, we had a blast. And of course, me and my buddies, we're all rooting for the Four Horsemen and all the way through the whole thing. Of course, that was when he was facing Savage, and it was Brian Pillman, Benoit, Arn, and Rick. They were mainly the Four Horsemen at that time.
Oh, that
And
was like the new. Wasn't there? What? That's not the original one, right? What was
no,
the
that's
original
not the
lineup?
original. This was like I said, this was 95
This was like the
Rick. Of
new.
course,
Yeah, yeah. Okay, okay, okay.
it wasn't quite the newest ones, but it was on the verge of being the newer ones.
Oh,
Okay.
okay. I think I know which one you're talking about. I think I might have seen that on TV
Yeah.
because that
When
was when it was like right around WCW,
yeah, it was WCW.
right?
It was straight up.
Okay, okay. Yeah, I
It
thought
was
it was earlier
Starrcade.
than that. Yeah.
No, it was WCW. But like I said,
Oh,
that was the
Danny
one where
Stanton was
Ric Flair
there.
won it. Were you there? I said that. You was at Starrcade and still had the ticket from it. I was up in the nosebleed seats fighting the little kids up there because they were all screaming that Rick had cheated and all that crap. And of course, me and my buddies, we would
Man,
never pick on little kids. But anyway, yeah. But that was the one where with
hey, it's
when
Tex.
Ric Flair he won it by Chris Benoit hitting him with Jimmy Hart's megaphone. He hit Randy Savage with it and won, and that's how Rick won it. But anyway, I
Who was the
digress.
original Four Horsemen?
That would be Ole Anderson, Arn Anderson, Tully Blanchard, and Ric Flair with James J. Dillon as their manager.
Hmm. I used to watch Arn Anderson. Never saw much of Ole Anderson, but I remember watching Arn Anderson in the NWA days, and I was like, "Yo, this guy's
Yeah,
kind of mean looking. He's kind of scary.
he scares
He's
people,
like
doesn't he?
scary, like a grumpy ass dad. Scary, you
Yep.
know."
They didn't call him the enforcer for no reason. But
Jason said there isn't a human on this planet who believes you wouldn't pick on children. I
well,
love picking on kids. They're such easy targets.
yeah, but I normally don't. But when we were talking about wrestling, that's a different story. I'm trying to mess with them.
Yeah, I love messing with little kids. I was notorious for it when I was a teacher, but I would do it in very cute ways that would make the other kids laugh. You know, it's all in
Yeah.
good fun.
Well, yeah. I mean, either way, I mean, it's like this is what we're talking about though when we're talking about how don't we're going to talk about Tex here in just a minute. This
Oh,
is the old days, where this was all so much fun to watch, whereas and it wasn't that what you talk about what brought me into it. This is what did it. The storytelling of the matches themselves, not even necessarily the promos. When you went to the matches themselves told stories,
they
and
weren't not like modern wrestling, right? Where it's just spot
this
after
is it's
spot after
gymnastics
spot.
now.
Yeah,
A lot of it's like
yeah.
gymnast spot, 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 spot. Everybody, it's so boring. They put a rear chin lock on a guy. Okay, but what's he doing the entire time he's got the rear chin lock? He's resting and giving the other guy a chance to rest, and he's messing with the crowd at the same time, getting the crowd pissed off
Hey,
at him even more.
Randy, do you remember back when the Canadian Destroyer was like the most devastating move in all of pro wrestling? And now in every match, people are landing like 5 or 6 at a time.
Dude, I remember when the
Like
DDT was the most devastating. The DDT used to be the most devastating one to see, but yeah, they never. Everybody does it now in some way, shape, or form. So it's lost its luster. Canadian Destroyer. Who was the guy? Petey Williams was one of the first ones that did it, I think, if I'm not mistaken, in Impact. First time I'd ever saw anybody do it anyway. And just watching him do it, you're like, holy crap! Did he just do a? He just sunset flipped over him into a pile driver. What the hell? And it was amazing. So
And now everyone does it all the time.
everybody does it. I mean, was Adam Cole calls it the Panama Sunrise, if I'm not mistaken.
Mm-hmm.
And they just DDT. The Future Shock DDT was a double underhook DDT. Which Cactus Jack did for years in the early '90s. I mean,
I remember as a kid, my favorite move to watch was the Gorilla Slam or the Gorilla Press, because you'd be like, "Oh my god, he's so strong!"
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, and then that was a
Like
that was a
Sid,
big
Warrior would do it.
Warrior was the biggest one that did it. I mean, but
Yeah, but Sid
we
would
won't.
do it.
That's
That's
a
why I like
whole
Sid.
other episode just talk about Warrior. So,
Oh yeah,
but and I see Derek Galloway with thoughts on Bray Wyatt. I'd rather not even discuss that
Rest
right now
in
because
peace.
that one was not. I feel so bad for his family. It just I knew he gotten sick, but I didn't know it was to that point.
No, you know which one really kind of broke my heart was Jay Briscoe.
That was just
That
such
stung. That stung.
that hurt. That really hurt.
That one hurt.
I mean,
Yeah.
to
I
get
love that
taken
guy.
away like that when you're going to pick your kids up,
Yeah.
I mean,
There's way too much
he was the
tragedy
better
in
of
the
the
pro
two
wrestling
brothers.
world, man. Yeah, he
Like,
was the better
but
one.
that's just a bad. That's just an accident, An accident happened, but god dang, just happened to the wrong
Yeah.
person at the wrong time, I guess. So,
Yeah.
but now Tex was talking about some old school ones there a minute ago. Kabuki, the great Kabuki. That dude, he was the
remember that
only
guy.
one that scared the what out of everybody as kids. Because he would come in and he'd spray the green mist that you see guys do now left and right out of Japan, especially. He sprayed the green mist first time we'd ever seen it. Well, Bruiser Brody. Bruiser Brody was a bad guy in this area for many, many, many years. And Bruiser Brody was fighting Kabuki in, I believe it was Fort Worth at the Will Rogers Convention Center one time. This was 78, 79 time frame. And Kabuki, as he had him up in a standing choke, Kabuki sprayed the green mist into his face. Well, of course, they went with the whole deal. He was blinded. He was this. He was that. And when he came back several months later, a couple months later, whatever, and recovered, he stated that Kerry Von Erich was the only one that ever came to check on him when he was in the hospital, quote unquote. It was to help bring Bruiser in to be a friend of the Von Erich. So storyline based, it was like, I was like, I'm 8, 9 years old. I'm eating this crap up,
Oh yeah,
eating it up like it's damn pizza on Sunday. This stuff was amazing. Oh, I didn't know Kabuki had died. Danny, I didn't know Kabuki had died. Now I knew that at one point they had, of course, Gary Hart was the one in front of it. Gary Hart said one time that when he brought in the great Muta, Kenji Muto,
that guy was my favorite as a kid.
He looks like he could barely move now, but he's still cool to watch when he was on our AEW a few months back or whatever. But they originally brought him in. Gary Hart pushed it like he was the son of the great Kabuki. So I was like, well, he did all the moves, same as what Kabuki would do. Only kind of a little bit wilder, but he did the mist stuff.
Yeah.
So, but hell, you go back, Killer Khan did the mist too. So big deal. It became kind of monotonous. Started picking it up after you get a little bit older and see it. Okay, yeah, we got a couple of people who are going to be doing this, but Killer Khan was a totally different animal too, with being the Mongolian guy. So he was one. He accidentally broke Andre's foot one time, and I don't think Andre appreciated that very much because Killer Khan didn't work a whole lot after that. I don't think.
Can I tell you the pro wrestling moment that scared the shit out of me as a little kid? Was when Ultimate Warrior was feuding with Papa Shango, and then in the middle of Ultimate Warrior's promo, this fucking ooze starts pouring out, and as a little kid, I'm like, "Oh my god, voodoo's real!"
Yeah,
and like, and then I'm like, because my family's very religious, I'm going to church every Sunday, and I'm like, "Oh my god, I go to church. That means the voodoo monsters, they're gonna not like me." I was scared. I was like, "Oh my, voodoo's real."
Okay, you need to. Is Jason trying to say that pineapple belongs on pizza?
Jason, don't troll us, sir. Please. That's the
I
last
just need to
thing
know
we
if you
need.
need to
Get
ban him or
trolled by
not.
Jason McLean of all people.
I'm with Tex though. Bruiser was probably one of my favorites growing up, honestly, because of the way he wrestled and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, David, obviously early on, David Von Erich. And then, like I said, as it went along, Ric Flair, because Ric Flair was great on the mic. He always put
Mm-hmm.
on good matches. He could make somebody else have good matches. That really, the match that Kerry Von Erich beat him for the world title at Texas Stadium in '84. Kerry wasn't a third of the wrestler that what Ric Flair was, but Ric Flair made him look decent, made him look good. Ric Flair can make a lot of people look good, and when you put him together with somebody, I just the storytelling again. You get an hour-long match with something, and you get really invested into that hour-long match because of what's going on in it. They don't even know how to spell an hour-long match now unless it's a last man standing or whatever they want to call it, Iron Man match.
And would you say he was the best of that era, in your opinion, Ric Flair?
Yeah, my personal opinion, I think so. That's just my personal. Him and Ricky Steamboat are right there with each other, and
I'd
Savage
say
too, because Savage could go too.
Bret Hart was up there.
Yeah, but he was a little bit
Bret
later than
Hart.
that too. He,
Yeah. Also,
but
he was a bit dry as a personality, but
drives a personality. But he also,
yeah,
the thing about Bret Hart was that's where the whole naming of the 5 moves of doom,
yeah.
that was Bret Hart. I mean, he had 5 moves. He'd get out there and grapple with you a little bit, but he had 5 moves, and that was it
Mm-hmm.
that he'd do every time. And then he'd set up sharpshooter, and away we go. But I liked him as a wrestler. Yes, his style
Okay.
and Flair's were not the same.
Which wrestler did you hate the most? Kayfabe.
Kayfabe hate.
Yeah, kayfabe hate the most.
Then I got to
Like you
think
just
about, because
couldn't stand that motherfucker.
of the old school ones, I'm assuming you mean the old school ones, right?
Yeah, yeah.
It's more of the manager, really, but Skandor Akbar. Skandor Akbar
I
was
don't
a
know who that
manager
is.
here. He was a manager here at Devastation Incorporated. He managed King Kong Bundy, Kamala down here. Him and Gary Hart. Gary Hart was another one. I absolutely hated Gary Hart with a passion.
Kayfabe.
The man was a genius. The man was a freaking
Mm-hmm.
genius as far as the wrestling business goes. But as far as kayfabe, boy, I wanted everybody to get hold of him and just beat the ever-living shit out of him every chance
Yeah,
we
I know
could.
that feeling. It was so
But
satisfying watching him get his.
yeah, and every time, and I watched him so many times get in there and get involved. Like, you see the managers nowadays, they got something there really isn't any managers now, other than if you want to call Paul Heyman that's it. But there really isn't any real managers like there were back then. I mean, you had Jim Cornette, who had the tennis racket. You had, when Sunshine was the
I
valet
hated Jim
for
Cornette.
Jim
Yeah.
Cornette's another one, is a genius in the business, but
Oh,
he made
shoot,
you
I love
hate
him.
him.
Kayfabe, I
He
hated him.
he
Yeah.
made you hate him. Just
Listen to what Danny's just said.
what's
For
that?
me, that would be Matt Bourne. We got into a real fight, and yes, I kicked a wrestler's ass. Wow.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me. I heard some bad things about him, but when he was here, though, Maniac Matt Bourne is what he was called here. I watched him get at a place here in my hometown called the Sheriff's Posse. They did the house show, if you want to call it that. Okay, One Man Gang was on the thing on that one. The One Man Gang comes out, and he's being managed by Gary Hart, and he's fighting Kerry Von Erich. This dude, and when I say somebody is not small, this dude was a side of beef. He was literally the size of a house. That's how big he was.
Mm-hmm.
But on that same one, Matt Bourne was fighting. I want to say the guy's name was Brickhouse Brown. I can't remember off the top of my head, but he's sitting there fighting him, and he gets down after winning the match. He gets down. He's jawing with some of the guys in the front row, and he gets down. And he says, "I'm better than you. I'm prettier than you, and I'll steal your wife away from you. And you ain't shit you can do about it." And I was like, "Dude, I like him." But then, like I said, he was another one. He was an ass. If I'm not mistaken, Danny was probably right. He was probably an ass to him, and Danny probably had to just put him back into his check a little bit, because I've heard that, because Arn Anderson started out as Matt Bloom. No, not Matt Bloom. What was his name? God, Arn Anderson's name early on. Matt Bloom is
Yeah, that's the other
what's his
guy.
name?
Yeah,
Yeah, that's the
yeah,
trainer guy now.
yeah,
Was
yeah.
Tensei or whatever at one time.
Prince
But
Albert,
anyway,
Prince Albert.
Albert. Yeah, that's Matt
Yeah,
Bloom. But trying to remember what his name was growing up.
man,
But
that guy got
either way,
cursed with bad gimmicks. By the way, poor
oh
guy.
yeah, oh yeah, and
Yeah,
because he's a hell
yeah,
of a damn wrestler too. He really
yeah.
was. Um, but him and
Tex said I liked Benoit till I didn't. Hey Tex, I'm gonna say it publicly right here. I demand to be on Infamous Minds, and then we do an episode on Chris Benoit. That episode
that
needs to
sounds like
happen.
a winner right there. That really does.
That episode needs to happen, sir. Anyway, continue.
Okay. Where was I talking about? I was trying to remember what
Shit.
Arn
Matt Bloom.
Anderson's
No, we were talking
original
about
name.
Arn Anderson. Yeah, I don't know that. That's
His
before my
original
time.
name, and I can't remember it off the top of my head. But one of his first setups was in Mid South area, and he was working with Matt Bourne, young Matt Bourne. Of course, Matt Bourne made a lot of stuff. Marty Lundy.
Oh,
That's it.
Matt
Thank you,
Lundy. Yes.
Danny, because I could not remember. I don't know why Matt Bloom was sticking in my head, but yeah, if I'm not mistaken, in the Mid South area where he's starting with Bill Watts' bunch, and I want to say Matt Bourne was one of the people he's working along with Buzz Sawyer, who's another legendary asshole. But it was started there, and him and Matt Bourne and Arn Anderson as Marty Lundy, they actually was it Texas? He did start in Texas. I thought it was in the Mid South area, but either way, they started together, or they were a tag team together for a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway,
anyway, oh no,
yeah, poor Arn had to get stuck with early on with people that really he shouldn't have been with because they weren't even close to being what his level ended up being. I loved Mad Dog Buzz Sawyer. Don't get me wrong. Buzz Sawyer was a great one to watch. Same thing with old Bugsy McGraw. But ooh, man. Anyway, so
who is your favorite commentator?
Oh, commentator?
Yeah.
Lord have mercy. Of course, I'd be kind of biased for the ones here, at Mark Lawrence and Bill Mercer, for here. But you got the legends. You got Gordon Soley, the dude that was in Memphis, Lance. I can't remember his last name now. he did the Memphis mainly. He kind of worked into NWA and WCW after that. Yeah, Gordon Soley. There's no mistaking Gordon Soley's voice. When Gordon Soley spoke, you just shut up and listen. Because it's the same. Bill, what's his name? Jr. Jim Ross now. Mm-hmm. Jim Ross is probably the dean of it all now. I mean, Gordon Soley was great, but now Lance Russell. Thanks, Danny.
You know who, in my opinion, I feel like is the most overlooked commentator, but for me personally, and this is a very subjective opinion, is my personal favorite commentator, Vince McMahon.
He was in his
day. That was the commentator I grew
guy.
up on.
Yeah, he was a play-by-play guy. I mean, yeah, put him.
And he was always good, man.
He was always with Jesse Ventura. So
yeah,
they were always together.
And he would play the straight guy.
Yep.
And then it would be Jesse Ventura being the loud ass.
Yep. That was,
and then the way Vince would be like, "Oh my god!" Right? The way he would scream that. I love the way he would scream that shit out.
Yeah. Yeah.
But then everywhere else, he's like such a straight man.
Yep. Same thing. Well, it's the same thing with Joey Styles over in ECW. Oh my god!
I love me some Joey Styles. I love me some Joey Styles.
I mean, and
I love me some Joey Styles.
I don't like any of the ones that are in the WWE now because other than I hate to say it because I don't like Michael Cole, but Michael Cole's probably the best one of the bunch that's there. And they don't have a good wrestler now. Now, Wade Barrett as color commentator on Monday Night Raw now, I like him. He sounds cool when he's talking, but he's that typical heel, color guy, just like what Ventura was and what Bobby the Brain was with Gorilla Monsoon.
You know who I thought was actually a really good color guy? Samoa Joe.
I like Samoa Joe at just about anything he did.
Yeah,
honestly,
that guy's fucking awesome at everything.
I mean,
He really
they
is.
missed it's such a missed boat up in the WWE with him. I mean, because they could have really
Oh
done a
damn it,
lot
WWE.
with him, but
Um, it-
he
this
ended up hurting
the
T.J.
dumbest
Hart, and that didn't help.
dumbass
Not T.J. Hart,
booking
T.J.
decisions,
Wilson.
dumbass booking decisions of the WWE would be an entire podcast series.
Oh yeah,
Like some
oh
of
yeah,
the dumb shit that they would do.
yeah, oh yeah.
Holy shit.
Gobbledygooker. All we got to do is bring up the
Yeah.
gobbledygooker. That's the first one right there. I mean, tease
No,
that thing all the time.
wrestling's
And then,
yeah.
yeah.
They had some
Yes,
stupid ass gimmicks back then.
yes, Magneticus. That Jim Duggan, Hacksaw Jim Duggan. That's he was one of them.
What? One of what?
He's asking if he was a wrestler.
Jim Duggan? Yeah. I love
Yep,
me some
yep.
Jim Duggan. You know, one of the guys I really hated as a kid, but I grew to love as an adult was Mr. Perfect. When I was a kid, I fucking hated that guy. But then the more
Yeah,
as I got older and I understand, the more I learned about like the shoot stuff, and I go
yeah.
back and watch his old promos, dude,
Uh-huh.
Mr. Perfect was awesome, man. I love that guy.
Oh yeah. I mean, that was back in the day where the wrestler could do his own promos. You know, he wasn't scripted as bad as they are now,
Mm,
and they could let their real personality kind of come out too, because he
mm.
had to have some of that in his own personality.
Shockmaster. I remember that. Well, everyone knows that shit went viral.
Yeah, that poor old
Shockmaster.
Tugboat or whatever his name was that played him.
What would you say was the
Fred Ott.
dumbest gimmick you ever saw, in your opinion? Was the
Dumbest
dumbest
gimmick?
gimmick? Yeah.
Oh, that whole 89, right before I went to Desert Shield, Desert Storm, 89, 90 time frame. There was a whole bit where right after Sting was won his first world title and was going to I believe it, Danny. I think it was
Oh, I think I know where you're going with
the
this.
the
I think I know
freaking
where you're going with
RoboCop
this.
crap.
Oh, that was my answer. Holy shit.
That RoboCop
RoboCop.
crap. I know it was supposed to be a damn a crossover to help promote the movie and everything too. The second one that was coming out, I think at that time. But I was just sitting there going, "Oh my God, what are they doing?" And then they bring out the Giant Gonzalez. You know, Jorge Gonzalez, the biggest stiff you could ever get, and he's the one that comes out to help out. And I'm like, okay, what are we doing here? You know, I mean, this don't make any sense at all.
No, you know what's a close second though?
What?
The Hogan Warrior Man in the Mirror segment. You remember that one? When Warrior shows up in the mirror with Hogan?
Oh, and WCW.
Yeah.
Yeah, I never was a fan of
Yeah.
Warrior in WCW in the first place. So the
That
Kiss
didn't
Demon,
go out
yes,
so well.
Tex. The Kiss Demon was bad. That was what the hell was his name? Dale Torberg, I think was his name. Oh God, the Red Rooster. Poor Terry Taylor. He'll never live that down, will he?
Poor guy. Poor guy. You know what was an extremely fucked up moment in pro wrestling that no one ever talks about that I feel like should be talked about more?
What's
Was
that?
Tatanka. Remember
Yeah,
Tatanka?
yeah, I
Okay, remember
Tatanka.
the scene where Tatanka, he's being awarded this super traditional headdress by like these
Headdress, yeah.
elder chiefs, right? And
Uh-huh.
he's like, it's such a proud and touching moment, and each
Mhm.
feather represents each tribe, right? And he's putting it on, and then next segment after, you see IRS beating the shit out of him with it, and he's just tearing that shit up.
Yep.
He's like,
Yep.
pay your taxes.
Yep.
That
Yep.
shit was fucked up, and nobody talks about it.
There's Danny
That
again.
shit
He's got
like was like burned in my brain. I was like,
oh
that's
yeah.
so fucked up.
And then Tatanka proceeds to join the $1 Million Corporation later. You know, I'm like,
Oh
God.
yeah, man.
Danny's got another one. How about Kane when he was the evil dentist? Yeah, Isaac Yankem,
Isaac
DDS.
Yankem? Yeah. I
I
would
felt
say that
sorry for
was
Glenn
not the
Jacobs
dumbest.
on that one.
No, I didn't. That was dumb. I don't think that was the dumbest. Pro wrestling has gone dumber.
IRS was Erwin R. Shyster, and it was actual Mike Rotunda who actually played the character.
And he was his gimmick was that he actually worked for the IRS, and he was an accountant. He was like this jacked accountant dude. Like he actually had like the suspenders and a tie, and he had like glasses, but he was all jacked. And his whole thing was, I work for the IRS, and you're behind on your taxes.
Yeah. Yep. Oh yeah. I mean, you know, like we're telling, we're getting kind of up into the WWE here, but when we were talking about those territory days in the early '80s and late '70s stuff, I mean, you're talking about names like Austin Idol, Robert Fuller, Tennessee Stud. You got freaking the exotic Adrian Street. If anybody ever saw this dude, you'd sit there thinking, "Oh, well, he's just kind of special, and nobody really likes that. He's just weird." The dude was a legitimate badass, the way I understood it, though. A legitimate badass. You did not mess with the dude. If you really wanted to go stiff with him, he would go stiff with you. But he was like he was a more flamboyant, exotic Adrian.
Well,
He was
he
he was
must.
more
So he
flamboyant.
was like Eugene. He was like Eugene. Remember
Eugene?
Eugene? He was that dude in
No,
the WWE. He was kind of like
no,
that
no, no, no,
sort of
no. He was the
R word
idiot
guy.
savant. No, he was the idiot savant. Is what you're talking about. You talking about Eugene, the one that Nick Dinsmore's character?
Yeah,
Yeah, no,
but that's
not
the thing
that.
about Nick Dinsmore. I heard he's actually a really freaking good
Oh,
wrestler. You know?
oh yeah, he is.
Yeah,
That was all a gimmick.
yeah,
That was all a gimmick.
yeah.
But Adrian Street,
Text like love.
look at there. Adrian Street was a shooter from England. See, and he was a legit badass. But his gimmick was like Adrian Adonis's adorable Adrian Adonis when he was up in the WWF,
Mm-hmm.
the barber shop, or not the flower shop that he hosted or whatever it was. It was kind of like that, but he wasn't. He was flamboyant, but he could go. You know what I mean? And you just didn't mess with him. It's just you're like, I don't know how to even take his matches, but it was cool to watch at the same time. So
Okay, let me ask you this question, Randy.
okay,
What was the most kayfabe? Kayfabe. What was the most
kayfabe guy.
fucked up thing you've ever seen? Kayfabe.
Boy, that's ooh.
Where you were like, as a kid, where you were like, this is so fucked up. I can't believe it's happening. Like what I told you about the Tatanka story. For me,
Yeah,
as a kid, I was like, I couldn't believe at how fucked up that was. That was like a headdress from the native elders.
yeah,
And
because
next
you
thing
believed it to
over,
be a
fucking
true
IRS.
headdress from native
Yeah, and I was
elders.
like, I can't believe the
I
audacity
would
of this man.
say, I would say the probably what I talked about with Kabuki and Bruiser Brody was the first one I can remember because I thought Bruiser Brody was going to die blind. You know, I really did.
Really?
That's the way I felt. You know, but later on, I mean, other than that, I mean, you just talk about uh the what was it when Brian Adias? There's a guy named Brian Adias here, and I take that back. To Chris Adams when Chris Adams turned on the Von Erichs too, and he hit Kevin and with a chair and started. That was kind of screwed up kayfabe wise too, because I thought at that time I was about 15 or 16 at that time, but it looked like the chair he used wasn't the one maybe he probably should have used, and Kevin ended up with a full blown concussion and a nice little cut for it. So, but it was a wooden chair; it wasn't the metal, So,
Responding to Texas comment, that stupid rated R crap. Hold on to that, Tex, because eventually, after you and I do our pro wrestling episode together, I plan on bringing the four of us, you, me, Randy, and Robbie, who I just did a pro wrestling show on, all four of us together, and
yeah,
then we will discuss a panel discussion specifically on the Monday Night Wars, which I like to call the pro wrestling version of the Civil War.
Yeah.
Because it was. And the right side won the Union. WWE. Anyway.
Oh, I know what Danny's talking about too. The two men that got married in the ring, quote unquote, where they were close to.
Oh, yeah.
That was the
Yeah.
Billy and
Yeah.
Chuck thing. That was the Billy and Chuck
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
I remember
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. I remember that.
It was kind of iffy, but the reason I liked it so much, that whole bit, because it introduced 3-minute warning. The Samoans. It introduced both of them in, and I'm like, those guys were cool, and they missed. There's another missed opportunity right there. They could have been monsters, but they turned them into a joke that quick.
Well, there's so many stories like that in pro wrestling. So many.
Oh yeah, yeah. There's
so many guys with so much potential that just fell victim to like shitty ass booking. So many.
Yeah, I mean, hell, you see it right now with Austin Theory. Austin Theory has the look. He's got the talk. He's got everything he should have. He's been booked like a dumbass.
Dolph Ziggler. That guy had everything.
Everything.
That guy had
And he had
everything.
a following. He had the crowd behind him too. That's the other thing. He was over, and they just would not do
Yo,
shit
that
with
dude
him.
hooked up with Amy Schumer, man. That
Yeah.
motherfucker legendary.
I don't know about that. There's a lot of people who
Yo,
with her, so.
that dude hooked up with Amy Schumer. That's all I gotta say. That's a legendary ass motherfucker, and they booked that dude into the ground.
According to the movies, so
Only
did John
because
Cena. So,
WWE can't write for shit. And then they let him go.
well, their
Such a
best writing
shame. I
was
love
when it
me
was
some
just
Dolph
kind of put them
Ziggler.
in a direction, and let them go, because but freaking Vince Russo takes all the damn credit for doing all that. I did all that. I did all that.
Oh,
I'm gonna
okay.
tell you right now, it's
No,
personalities that
hold
did
on
the
to that.
majority of it.
Hold on to that, Randy, because I
Mhm.
eventually want to sit down and listen to you rant on Vince Russo because I got thoughts about that motherfucker, and I'm sure you do too.
And I don't think about him. Quite frankly, I just don't think about him because he wants himself to be, up there. And I'm more along the lines of Jim Ross. Fuck that son of a bitch. Top
Well, Jim Cornette
douchebag
too.
ever. Jim Cornette's got his own problems, but you know what? When your old wrestlers like New Jack and Mustafa Ali, you bring them, they come in, as the gangsters in Smoky Mountain Wrestling.
Mm-hmm.
In the middle of the backwoods of Tennessee, and he looks at him and says, "Go out there and piss off white people."
It's
And
one of my
that
favorite
just tells
promos of all time. It's one of my favorite
damn
promos of all
right,
time.
damn right. And
As a
you
matter
know
of
what?
fact, I watched that promo last night to get
Yep.
myself mentally prepared for this show. It's one of my
I'm
favorite
telling you
ass
what.
promos. You know why it was so good? Is because New Jack and Mustafa Ali, do you know what they did in that promo? They managed to piss off the NAACP and the
Yep.
KKK at the same fucking
Same
time.
time.
And I'm like,
Yes.
that is the most genius fucking speech I've ever heard in my life.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Because I'm telling you right now, a lot of people talk bad about New Jack, and New Jack, yeah, he deserves a lot of it. He would have admitted he deserved a lot of the bad talk about him.
Yeah, he shouldn't have
But
cut up that poor boy.
that poor boy should
He
have never
shouldn't have
come
cut
to
up,
him like that, though.
but he should not have cut up that poor boy like that.
No,
He
he
was just
should
a
have.
kid. He was a
And
kid.
he shouldn't have thrown freaking Grimes off of the thing trying to
Yeah,
miss where he
that
supposed
was
to
that
land.
was fucked up.
But
That could have ended in death.
But like I said, New Jack was firm believer in paybacks, and getting the receipts.
Mm-hmm.
But if you listen to him talk and listen to the way he articulates himself, that man was smarter than you know what when it came to wrestling.
Mm.
And there is a rant out there where he goes off about Chris Benoit.
Mm-hmm.
Because at one time the gangsters were managed by a woman, Nancy, his Benoit's wife. So
I saw that.
Oh my God! And he never said anything but truth in that entire shoot. He tore Benoit up one side and down the other. So, and he told everybody, "Don't make excuses for him. He can rot in fucking hell."
And you know
Excuse
what?
my
The ghost
language
of
for
Chris
everybody. I
Benoit
just said that shit.
actually the ghost of Chris Benoit would probably be like, I agree.
Probably now.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, but anyway.
Anyway, okay. Actually, that kind of leads. That's a good segue, actually, because here's another direction I want to take this conversation.
Okay.
One of the, how would I start with this? The way a lot of the way I interact with the paranormal stems from my pro wrestling fandom, because the way I treat pro wrestling and the way I treat paranormal topics is the same.
Mm-hmm.
I come in with the same mentality.
Yeah.
It's part of the reason why I'm so random and goofy in these otherwise serious ass paranormal shows, because I kind of realize it for what it is. The paranormal is all about kayfabe and shooting. And let me explain. Okay. In the world of pro wrestling, there are two types of fans. There are kayfabe fans and there are the shoot fans, right?
Mm-hmm.
The kayfabe fans are the ones who get into the characters, the gimmicks, the stories. They get upset when the heel does something fucked up. They get hyped when their favorite wrestler wins, right? That's kayfabe.
Yeah.
And then they're the shoot fans. The shoot fans are the ones who read Pro Wrestling Magazine. They read all the dirt sheets. They read about what's going on in the other shows. And then when they're watching like their favorite wrestler, like one wrestler get over, they're just like, oh, I heard that guy's an asshole backstage. They're the shoot fans. right?
Yeah.
And I realized, oh, at the end of the day, what the cryptid paranormal community is, at the end of the day, there's two types of fans. There's the kayfabe fans, and there's the shoot fans. Same way, right?
Yeah.
For example, Bigfoot being a solid flesh and blood creature versus Bigfoot being this magical interdimensional being with all these powers and shit, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
The people who think that way, interdimensional magical shit, those are the
Hmm.
kayfabe people. The
Yeah.
people who are all about boots on the ground, gonna catch me a Bigfoot, gonna hunt it down, investigate, and this is a flesh and those are the shoot fans.
Yeah.
Oh shit, this
I
is
can
just
see
pro
that.
wrestling. This is just
I
pro
can see that.
wrestling.
Well, then where would you
And
consider
then
me?
at the end of the day, but then at the end of the day, also, here's another reason why pro wrestling and paranormal are so similar. So filled with marks.
Yeah.
So filled with marks.
Exactly.
I'm walking around, I'm like, I think we're all just a bunch of marks.
That's, and quite frankly, at any conference, I don't care if it's paranormal, Bigfoot, Dogman, whatever the case might be, any conference, Comic-Con, everybody walking in there's a mark.
They're just marks. We all are. And
Yeah.
a lot of the people like us, right, Randy? People
Mhm.
who are like actually in front of the camera, a lot of our friends who are in front of cameras,
Yeah.
just like us versus just like pro wrestlers. Isn't
Yeah.
it so true that so many of us like to mark out for ourselves?
Well, you got to. If you don't mark out for
Yeah.
yourself, I mean, look at to go back to wrestling right now, MJF. He marks out for himself and brings the crowd with him.
I bet you behind the scenes when the cameras are off, I bet you he's like the humblest dude.
Oh, it wouldn't surprise me in the least because I mean, the only being stationed out in El Paso, we had the WWE came in for shows, a Raw one time, and a bunch of house shows in the El Paso area. And a lot of times we have people at the airport as courtesy patrol. In the Army, you have you're out courtesy patrol because it's a training post, so you have to help people get on. New recruits, get them to
Mhm,
post, get them all checked in and stuff. So you're out there. Well,
mhm,
here come all these wrestlers through the actual airport, and when you meet them, that Kurt Angle, nicest guy in the world. I mean, this dude
mhm.
took time to sit there and talk to everybody he saw just about. But I sat there and watched Steve Austin sit there in a or in a airport terminal on a phone. And don't get me wrong, it was on a phone, but it was a little kid. It was like probably an eight,
Mhm.
9-year-old kid came up and asked for his autograph. He literally looked over, can't you see him on the phone? No. And, did one of them. Same things what the Warrior did to that kid about,
Well, you heard
was
about the Undertaker. That
mm,
motherfucker was in character for 30 fucking years.
yeah, he
The
never broke.
Undertaker, Mark Kelly.
He didn't break character in El Paso's airport either. He
Not
literally
even
walked through
once.
like that. I'm like, you got to be kidding me. Brock Lesnar,
No, he actually
he
showed
stayed in
his
character too.
closet. It was all black clothes.
Yeah,
He was like, all
yeah,
my clothes are black because I have to wear black all the time. For 30
yeah,
fucking years, he could only wear
yeah,
black clothes. That would drive me nuts.
yep.
That would drive me absolutely insane.
I like
Like,
what
how do you do
Derek
that?
says there about L.A. Knight, because L.A. Knight, you're right. He's probably the flavor of the month right now. So,
Hmm.
but you're right. I mean, because like I said, freaking Brock Lesnar did the same thing, and he was one of the champs at the time. I think he was a world title holder at that point. But when he came in, he didn't talk to nobody. He was straight business all the way through. He wasn't mean to anybody, but he was not polite either. You know what I mean? He
Hmm.
wasn't cordial. He literally got off plane, grunt here, grunt there, and keep on going type thing. But Ric Flair, I sat there and watched Ric Flair and Sting in an airport restaurant eating together. They're supposed to be feuding and everything. They were eating together, and it
Hmm.
was like they were as nice as they could be, both of them, just as welcoming as anybody would ever want to be. You know what I mean? A
Hmm.
little kid goes up and asks for an autograph, and both of them give autographs, just no problem.
Yeah.
So I mean, it depends on the person too. Like I said,
Yeah.
yeah, I need to get with Danny though. He's telling stories over there. I'm like, I would like to know more about the. He'd be the one maybe you talk to about on the Benoit side because he knew both of them.
Yeah, that show. I mean, not so fixated on it, but I feel like if there's ever a need to do an Infamous Minds episode with Tex, a topic,
Yeah,
if Donny
yeah,
Cho were ever
that's
to
it.
come on, it would be to talk about Chris Benoit because yeah, I know that
Yeah,
story
that's
pretty
probably one of
well.
the darkest. That one or my boy right here. That murder right there.
Well, I mean, dark that no, Randy, because if we talk about the darkest shit in pro wrestling, there's always going to be something just as dark, if not darker. Like I could bring
Well,
up
no,
Owen Hart.
I'm just talking about
Yeah,
the Infamous Minds part. I'm talking about because this one was a murder,
yeah,
whereas
that was a murder. Yeah,
Benoit
yeah.
was a
Where
murder.
that was a
But
murder.
no, Owen Hart was an accident that due to
Yeah, that was a
stupidity.
very tragic accident that should not
Yeah,
have happened.
no, it shouldn't have.
Um, Superfly Jimmy Snuka is another one.
He died. I think he did die right
Yeah,
recently.
he did die. Yeah,
Okay, because I know
not
he's been
recently, but
about a year or two ago though.
oh, if you want to get dark though, Jake the Snake Roberts and his dad. What was his dad's name
Oh,
again? That
don't
Grizzly.
bring Grizzly Smith up. Don't bring
Oh,
Grizzly
we
Smith
gotta
up.
get dark. We could go dark.
That's dark.
Grizzly Smith. Yeah,
That's
that's dark.
it's not as bad as Benoit, but it's pretty damn
That's
close.
dark. That's yeah.
Yeah, oh Derek, who you got? Bigfoot or Brock Lesnar? I think I'm gonna have to go with Lesnar on that one.
Mm-mm.
Yeah, I got
Really?
Lesnar on that one. I got Lesnar on that one.
Really?
Yeah.
No.
Why not?
Why?
Because have you? It's not just the wrestling fact of it. Didn't you see all the damn pictures of Brock Lesnar out in at his place in Minnesota, whatever it was, shooting prairie dogs with a 50 cal sniper rifle?
I have seen those.
That is freaking
No,
gold. I'm talking, dude.
no. Honestly, Randy, we got to stop right here because the Brock Lesnar is a podcast episode. I have things to say
Yeah.
about that man. I have
Okay,
things to
cool.
say about that man.
Okay, you got to keep me straight then, because I start going off on tangents.
Yeah. No, I love that man. Like I love that man.
Really?
Like
I mean,
awkwardly
don't get me
love
wrong.
that man.
He looks like he looks like he keeps he does keeps his character. He stays in character when he's out. When I saw him anyway, I don't know how he does it now, but I mean, there's so many of them that still do
I
it. I
love
mean,
that man.
now that
No, you know
the
why I love that
Undertaker's
man?
retired, why's that?
Because I know that in private and deep down inside, he's a down to earth guy.
Oh, I believe it. I really do.
Yeah, I really
I
do.
really do. I believe it. I mean,
You know, oh,
there's so
by the
many of
way,
them
you know who I heard was like apparently was like the nicest dude, like literally the nicest dude in the world, Bobby Lashley. And
that's
here's
everything.
why
Well,
I
he's
know
an
this.
ex-army sergeant, so
Yeah, he was an
I
ex-army
just
sergeant and MMA fighter, right? But
yep,
here's the
yeah,
thing,
he
right?
did the MMA for a
You
little bit.
remember Brendan Shaw?
Yeah,
Brendan Shaw, the
okay,
fighter? Okay.
yeah.
So I remember back in the day when he first did his first before he started podcasting, he was just being interviewed.
Yeah.
And then he was just talking, and then people would ask him, "Hey, Brendan, of all the MMA fighters, who was like the nicest dude?" And he said, "Hands down, Bobby Lashley." This is
Yeah.
before he went back to wrestling, right?
Yeah.
And they were like, "Why Bobby Lashley?" And then Brenda was like, "Listen, I've trained with literally every camp, every fighter, literally. Like even if I had never trained with them, like I know people who've trained with them.
Yeah.
Like they all train with each other, they all know each other."
Yeah.
And by far, Bobby Lashley is like the kindest, nicest. Like he goes out of his way to encourage people, super positive.
Mm-hmm.
Even like people who are like just like random people who wander in, he's like super welcoming. And he's just always positive all the
He
time. And
seems
he's like,
that. He really does.
and then Brendan Shaw was like, I cannot believe how nice and freaking good this man was.
Yeah.
And I'm like, holy shit, I'm a Bobby Lashley fan for life.
And I have been for a long time. I mean, he was green,
Yeah.
obviously, when he was in the WWE the first time. He was real green, but after he went to the MMA for a little bit, and then he did that
Yeah.
stint in Impact. Impact's what made him
See,
grow. Honestly,
see,
he grew into a beast.
for people listening back home, who are not familiar with pro wrestling, who have managed to sit through all this pro
Yeah,
wrestling nerd out session, let me
sorry.
explain another side of pro wrestling fandom. For me, another side is the side where you actually do hear the backstage stories, right?
Yep.
When actual pro wrestlers sit down when they're not in character and they just do like interviews. Dude, I used to listen to fucking shoot interviews for days. I don't know if you did. Like, remember those shoot interviews where they would sit down with
Oh,
like Kevin Nash,
I watch him
Scott
on
Hall,
YouTube all the
and they
time.
would like literally pick their brain and they'll be like, tell it like how you saw it, and they would say, "Oh man, I would listen to those things for days, man, for
Well,
days."
yeah, I was saying, I was saying, I'm still am the same way. I find ones that I had never seen before, like before Kamala died, before he even had his legs amputated. James Harris, he did a shoot interview, and they started talking, and he talked about Abdullah the Butcher running all the black wrestlers in Japan. Everything had to go through Abdullah, and Kamala's like, "Screw
Hmm.
you ain't getting none of my damn money," and he ended up not working in Japan for a little while for it. But he was
Hmm.
always the reason he left the WWF the first time because he was doing a program with Hogan, but wasn't making the same money that other people that were working with Hogan was making. They were shortcutting him, and he's
Hmm.
like, "Nah, I ain't playing that shit." The man, but listen, he's just a big old baby. You just talking to him and listening to him talk. You're like, how could you not like this guy? How could anybody have
Oh,
not liked him?
you know who was the most opposite from his gimmick or his character, in my opinion?
Who's that?
Vader.
Oh yeah,
Vader.
no doubt.
The
He was
stories
the
I heard
nicest
about
guy
that
you
guy,
ever want to meet. Yeah, I hear you. He
not
was
just
the
the
nicest one.
nicest, but like he was like in terms of in the ring and in character, one of the most violent, brutal men. Right? He will fuck you up.
Yeah. Yep.
But then
I
behind
agree.
the scenes, there was this one story I heard in a podcast where he was like one of the promoters called him and be like, "Hey, where are you going? Where are you?" And then his mom picks up the phone and she's speaking
Hmm.
for him. She's like, "Oh, my little, what was his first name again?
Wait,
His
which
real
one?
name? Leon. He's Leon." She
Yeah,
was like,
Leon.
"Oh,
Leon White.
Leon. Oh, I'm speaking for Leon. I'm his mom. Well, Leon's upset." And the promoter's like, "Ma'am, Leon's not. Vader's not coming to the. Where is he? And she's like, "You've upset Leon. He's a big boy and he's sensitive." And then you can hear him crying on the couch in the background. He's like, "Oh, it's okay, Leon." I was like, "Yo, this guy's literally the fucking opposite of his character."
Yeah, and uh, I don't know how true that truly is. But
It's a fun story, though.
it's a fun
See,
story.
that's the
Yeah,
other
but
thing. Wait, hold on. That leads me to another point about pro wrestling and the paranormal.
uh huh.
One of the things that pro wrestling has taught me is that just let go of whether or not it's real or
Yeah.
fake. Just enjoy it for what it is. Enjoy the
Hmm.
story.
Exactly.
I
Don't
just
try and
love
read
that
into it.
story. Don't try to read into it. Don't try to say, "Oh,
No.
it's real." It's not. I just love the story for what it is.
Yeah.
I just love that story of Leon, the man who played fucking Vader.
Vader. Yep.
I just love that fucking story.
If
So sue
anybody
me.
had any doubts about the way that man really was, look at when he inducted. Hang on a second. Gotta get rid of my alarm there. I got to go pick up a kid here in a few. But look at when he inducted Stan Hansen into the WWE Hall of Fame and listen to him talk at that time. Vader was a giant teddy bear.
He's a big sensitive boy.
And he might have been a big sensitive boy. And you
Meanwhile,
know
oh
what?
yeah, by the way,
I ain't taking that
Vader
chance because
Vader is also famous for in this really fucking brutal ass hardcore match in Japan for having his eyeball literally pop out of his head. Literally, it
yep,
happened.
yep.
You know what I'm
And
talking
Stan
about.
Hansen did it.
Yep. And anyway, I feel like with this, I will bid y'all's adieu. Unless Randy, you got any final words or thoughts or messages or things to say about wrestling
Uh,
you want to say to the
well,
people
yeah.
at
Keep
home?
watching, and if you get a chance, go out and look at some of the old school stuff.
Look up
There's
the
it's
old
all
school
over.
shit. Look up the old school
It's
shit.
all over YouTube. There's so many Bruiser Brody matches out there on on YouTube. There's so many of the older ones, and some of the Japanese, the stuff from Japan. There's some of that stuff that
That's
you
a whole
become,
other rabbit hole, my friend.
yeah.
Whole other rabbit hole.
What do we call it? Purorisu is what it was called at one
Mhm.
time. And that's where tapes back in the 80s. It was
That's
all
a
tape
whole other
trading.
rabbit hole. Don't get
Yeah.
me started
So,
on Antonio Inoki, my friend. Don't get
but
me started.
well, yeah. Now there was another shooter for you though.
Don't
But
get
I
us
want to get with
started. There's so
I
many
want to get
rabbit
with Danny
holes.
though. I got to get on Danny's thing so I can start looking at some of his stuff. Because with that kind of experience he's got in the business like that, he's got to have so many tales. It's not even funny. I want to just go watch some of his stuff now. Because all my
right,
stories are just from the fan side, So
Yeah, that's all we are at the end of the day, right? With the paranormal, with
dang
pro
right.
wrestling, and with
Yep,
life. All we can be is just fans.
that's
And
it.
with that, I feel like that's the way to end it.
That sounds
Please.
good to me.